Hello. In this episode, I will go over the questions in exercise 2K on classifying functions, whether they are onto, one-to-one, or neither, both. Now, for a function to be onto, it means that all the y values, that means all the range, has to come from an input or more than one input. It has to come somewhere. Whereas one-to-one just means that for every single input, there will only be one particular output at most. So what does it mean? For one-to-one function, it means that it has to satisfy both the horizontal test, horizontal line test, and the vertical line test. So here you see that this satisfies vertical line test. That means it will only intersect at most once. However, it will fail a horizontal line test at each of these integer value from -3 to +4. So that means for our first question, this is not onto. I mean, not one-to-one. And also not onto, because you see that the range given here, this is what it needs to map into, goes from -3 to all the way 4, except for 4. But we can assume that they are talking about real numbers in this case. So therefore, there are numbers in between that are missing. For example, I cannot map anything to 2.5, right? So you see how there's no value at 2.5? So I can't take any of these inputs and give me 2.5. It's not going to get there. So therefore, this is not onto. Therefore, this is neither. Okay, the next question. This is a cubic function. So it satisfies the horizontal line test as well as the vertical line test everywhere. And also, this can take any x values and give you all the y values as well too within that range. So therefore, this is one-to-one, and it's also onto. So therefore, it's both. Okay, here we see three crooked lines. So it seems like that it's going to be piecewise functions like that. But in any case, we check that it's going to be a function first. So if you draw vertical lines everywhere, you see that that passes the vertical line test as well as the horizontal line test, right? For any horizontal line that you draw, it will only cross the function, it will only cross the curve at most once. So this is one-to-one. As to onto, it needs to go from between -3 to +5. So this is not onto because you have things that are outside. So the entire range needs to be here. So you see that there's portion here that doesn't have an output. So therefore this is not onto. So just one-to-one. Question 4. So what does it mean if you have a mapping diagram like this? Well, basically, to check if something is one-to-one, we want that each input should only go to one output, and there is no more than one input that maps to the same output. So that's why it's called one-to-one. Like for each input and output, they only share one-to-one relation. You can't have like two things that are, like you can't have this going out this way. So it's not one-to-one anymore in that case. So for this particular question, it's one-to-one because every input corresponds to one output only. Now, what happens to the C? C does have a partner. So in this case, this is a one-to-one relation. Therefore, this is a function. But because C does have a partner, it's not onto. So X doesn't map to all the things in Y. So there's just one-to-one. Now if you take a look at 5, the difference here is C kind of has 2 people chasing around them. Okay, C is a lucky person. But unfortunately, this is not a 1-to-1 just because of that. There's actually there's actually many to 1, but not 1-to-1. However, it is on 2 because all the elements D, B, and C, they all have something. They all have an input that is pointing to them, maybe even more than one. So this is on 2 only. Okay, with a graph, we can test vertical line test. Seems to be okay. It only crosses here, so only once. And over here, only crosses there, so only once. That seems okay. However, it fails horizontal line test. So if I take, for example, here, it crosses twice. So therefore, it is not 1-to-1. Okay, it's a function. It's just not a 1-to-1 function. As to onto, you need to read this carefully. This is saying all the positive real numbers, including 0. In other words, they're saying anything that is greater than or equal to 0. And if you take a look at this curve, there are some missing parts here. Actually, no, it has everything. Because if you take a look at this curve here, this is 0 and above, right? So I mean, the right-hand side, we don't even care what's there because it already has some outputs that are 0 and greater. So therefore, this one is onto. I mean, when I draw this curve, I'm really talking about the range of those. And 7 is create your own functions. There are too many to name, so I'll stop here. I hope you enjoyed. Well, hope you learned something, and I'll see you in my next video.